admitted I still dream about my ex during a drunken game. He hasn't kissed me since. For the past 6 weeks, my marriage has felt like a house with lights, but no one comes in. We go about our days, sharing meals and even watching the same shows, but there's a significant gap between us that didn't exist before. It is not loud or dramatic, it's still. That stillness makes you aware of every movement you make. It started after one night at a friend's birthday party. A night that was supposed to be fun, enjoyable, harmless, and it was exactly what we needed to break out of our routine and stress. We were laughing, drinking, and playing games. Then, a single question came up, and in the space of a few seconds, I answered carelessly, in a way that brought a shift between us. I didn't expect it to be such a big deal. Since then, Samson hasn't kissed me. Now I'm starting to believe that when I said those words, I lost something I can never get back. Hello, Reddit. My name is Catherine. I am 29 years old and have been married to Samson, who is 33, for 4 years. Before we got married, I imagined we would be one of those couples who remained happy for the rest of their lives. I thought love was enough if two people respected each other and shared the same goals. Samson, my husband, is calm, patient, and kind. He works in a technology company, and his salary is sufficient to meet our needs. When I first met him, I was in need of stability. My previous relationship had been the opposite. Before Samson, I was with David. David was my first serious boyfriend and my first love. We met when I was in my early 20s, and everything about him seemed exciting. He was charming but unpredictable. We traveled a lot, stayed out late, and argued almost as frequently as we laughed. He made me feel very special, but the ups and downs were exhausting. His flaws were not the type to be managed. I loved him, but I could never completely trust him. After nearly 3 years, the relationship ended badly. I promised myself I would never go for that type of man again. Guys, when Samson came into my life, I saw someone completely different. The negative impression I had about men changed. He was steady, not loud, respectful, and kept his promises. We met at a mutual friend's dinner, where we couldn't stop staring at each other until we had no choice but to exchange pleasantries. After we got talking, we eventually exchanged contacts. I liked that he listened more than he talked, and when he did talk, he thought about his words. We dated for a year before getting engaged. It was the safest relationship I had ever been in, and that was what I wanted. We got married after a few months of being engaged. It was the type of wedding I had wanted all my life, so it was very memorable. Our marriage started well. We enjoyed cooking, eating, and showering together, watching movies, and taking short trips. But over time, life became a routine. Every day was a repeat of the previous day. We both worked a lot, and our days started to look the same. Wake up, go to work, come home tired, eat dinner, watch something, go to bed. We didn't fight much, but we didn't have much excitement either. I sometimes caught myself remembering how intense things used to be with David, especially when we made love, but I didn't think much of it. I told myself everyone sometimes thinks about the past. Samson and I still had a social life. We would see friends once in a while. One Friday, a close friend invited us to a small birthday party, but it was more of a get-together at her apartment. She said it would be a relaxed night with drinks, music, and games. We both agreed to go. I remember thinking it might be good for us to do something fun together instead of just staying home. That night, I put on a casual but very beautiful dress and light makeup. Samson wore jeans and a t-shirt. We took a cab there and arrived around 8 p.m. The place was full of familiar faces. People were laughing, drinking, and the whole house booming with music. The mood was warm and friendly. We started with small talk, catching up with friends we hadn't seen in months. We all talked about our work, our marriages, and other things. Drinks were passed around. I had my first glass of wine, then a second. Samson had a beer and stayed near me most of the time. At exactly 10 p.m., someone suggested we play a drinking game. It was a mix of truth or drink. The rules were simple. If you didn't want to answer a question, you had to drink. Everyone agreed. The questions started to light up. Things like, never have I ever skipped work for no reason. Or, truth, what's the most embarrassing thing you've done in public? We kept on laughing and teasing each other about any response. I didn't know yet that the game would bring serious distances in my marriage. The game kept going, and the questions slowly became more personal. Most of us were already tipsy, so answers were louder and funnier. I was feeling relaxed, very relaxed, after a few glasses of wine. We sat in a circle on the living room floor. There were empty bottles and snack plates around us. The music was still playing softly in the background. I remember feeling some type of way, like warm in my face and light in my head. The host then asked a question about crushes, then another about first kisses. Then the next person asked, "Truth, have you ever dreamed about someone you used to date?" The group laughed and waited for answers. At first, people gave quick replies. Some admitted it and shrugged. Others laughed and took a drink instead of answering. I wasn't really thinking. I was seriously under the influence of the drinks. I just spilled out, "Yes, I still sometimes dream about my ex." As soon as I said it, I felt a change. It wasn't a big reaction from the group. Some people laughed. Some made playful comments. But when I looked at Samson, his expression had shifted. He didn't smile or laugh. He just looked at me for a moment, then looked away. The game went on. The questions moved to other topics, but I could feel that Samson had gone very calm. He drank slowly, kept his answers short, and didn't joke like before. It seems he was no longer interested in the game. Later, when it was late, people started leaving. Samson and I said goodbye to our friends and called a cab. The ride home was silent. I tried to make little conversations about the night, but he only gave short replies. When we arrived home, I went to the bedroom to change and take a cool bath, while he stayed in the living room for a while. When he finally came in, he lay down without saying much, and we both fell asleep without a kiss or even a goodnight touch. The next day, things felt off. Samson wasn't rude, but he wasn't affectionate either. Usually we would have small hugs in the morning, or he would kiss me before leaving for work. That morning, he just said he was leaving and walked out. At first, I thought maybe he was tired or had something on his mind, but the same thing happened the next day, and the day after. No morning kisses, no evening kisses, just short but polite conversation and distance. I started replaying that moment in the game over and over in my head. I wondered if I had made it sound worse than it was. The truth is, I have dreamed about David a few times over the years. It's never something I control, and the dreams are usually strange and short. David was literally still on my mind, my imagination. Sometimes it was not even romantic, just him showing up in some random place. Well, most times I dreamt about us kissing, but I realized that saying it out loud, in front of other people, might have made Samson feel like I have been thinking about David and still wanted him in my life. I told myself I would bring it up when we were both in a good mood. But days passed, and the mood never came. The silence between us began to feel heavier. This was something that had never happened before. Once we had issues, we discussed it immediately and moved on. The first week after that night was strange but manageable. Samson still spoke to me, still asked if I had eaten, still shared small updates about work. But there was something missing. It was like a door had been closed between us, and I didn't know how to open it again. The biggest difference was the lack of physical touch. We had always been the type to greet each other with a kiss, even on busy mornings. We would touch hands while watching TV or hug in the kitchen just because. Then he moved around me like we were strangers. He still slept in the same bed, but there was always space between us. I tried to tell myself it was temporary and he would get over it. Maybe he was stressed with work. Maybe I was imagining things. But deep down, I knew the timing was too close to that game for it to be unrelated. The second week, the distance became more obvious. We would eat dinner together in silence unless I started a conversation. He didn't look angry, just far away. He spoke just a few words. I asked once if something was wrong, and he said no, everything was fine. But his tone told me the opposite. At night, I lay awake sometimes, thinking about what I should have said instead. I could have laughed it off or taken a drink like others did. I could have said no and kept whatever dreams I had to myself. But I answered honestly without thinking about how it would sound to him. The truth is, my dreams about David aren't something I think much about. They just happen. Sometimes it's a short dream where he's at a cafe and I walk past. Sometimes we're talking about something random. Very rarely it's romantic. But they don't leave me wanting to call him or see him. If anything, they make me remember why we didn't work. David was an interesting person to be with, yes. He made me feel alive in a way that was addictive. But he also made me insecure. I never knew if he was fully committed. Our breakup was messy and painful. I cried for months. and when I met Samson, I felt safe for the first time in years. But I guess to Samson, hearing that I still dream about David might sound like I'm keeping a part of that relationship alive in my heart. Maybe it makes him feel like he's a second choice, or that I'm still holding on to the past. The tension started to affect my mood too. I found myself getting very quiet around him. I stopped trying to touch him because I didn't want to be rejected. I started spending more time scrolling on my phone in the evenings while he sat with his laptop. The worst part was how much I missed him. I missed his hand on my back when we walked. I missed him pulling me close on the couch. I missed the way he would kiss me before leaving the house. Then, all of that was gone, and it felt like I was living with a roommate instead of a husband. By the end of the 3rd week, I started to feel restless and was fed up with the whole thing. I didn't want to keep living in this half relationship. I kept thinking about how one small moment could have such a big impact. It scared me. And yet, deep down, I was also angry. Not at him, but at myself. Angry that I had let my guard down and said something that didn't even mean much to me, but clearly meant a lot to him. Angry that I hadn't read the room and realized it wasn't the place to be that honest. So one night, I got angry and stormed out of the house. I didn't inform Samson where I was going. I became really frustrated by everything, and I thought to clear my head at a bar not too far from our neighborhood. I got there and ordered 2 bottles of alcohol. Stepping into the bar lightened my mood a little bit. I was enjoying the music when a guy came to sit beside me at the counter. Of course, I didn't know him from anywhere. That was our first time meeting each other. He offered to pay for my drinks, but I declined. I told him that I could afford it. Honestly, guys, I can't even remember his name or what he looked like again, but at that moment, he looked really cute. We got talking about random things, and then we started flirting with each other. Something led to another, and I told him what happened between my husband and I. I told him that I came to the bar to relieve myself from the anger in me. At that point, I had almost finished a bottle of alcohol before he stopped me. He told me to give my husband some time so that he would come around soon. I kept asking him when the soon would be because I was getting impatient, but he didn't answer. He kept stopping me from drinking. I drew closer to him and stared at him for a few minutes. Then I got closer and stared at his lips and asked him to kiss me. He told me that I had had enough to drink for the night and that I should go home. Immediately, I asked him why he had approached me in the first place, if not that he liked me. The guy looked at me and said he did like me, but would want me to go back home to my husband, but I refused. Instead, I started him. He tried to stop it, but gave in, and we started kissing passionately. At that moment, I didn't care if anyone was looking. And guys, I wasn't under the influence of alcohol. I was aware of everything that was happening. While we were kissing, someone from the back started clapping. Immediately, we stopped to see who it was. Lo and behold, guys, it was my husband, Samson. I was shocked to see him there. Yes, I stormed out of the house that night, but I didn't expect to see him there. All along, he followed me to the bar. Immediately, I stood up from where I was seated in shock. With shame, I asked Samson what he was doing at the bar. My husband looked at me and told me how disgusted he felt looking at me right there. He asked me if I had come to turn my dreams with David into reality. Samson knew how my last relationship ended, but he didn't know what David looked like. I didn't have photos of us then for him to know who David was. Even on my social media account, I deleted the photos of David and I, and he blocked me on all of his social media handles even before I deleted our photos. So guys, Samson thought that the guy I was kissing at the bar was the same as my ex, David. The one I confessed to dreaming about. He didn't know that it was a different guy. We almost had a one-night stand if we didn't get interrupted. I honestly didn't know what got into me, but I couldn't stop myself. I already liked the new guy in front of me to the extent that I didn't mind him taking me to his house or hotel to sweep me off my feet. You all wouldn't blame me. Samson wasn't giving me the attention I wanted, and he wasn't touching me, which I wanted so badly. So guys, I told my husband that the guy who I was kissing wasn't David. He then asked me who the hell he was, and I told him that I didn't know either. Samson had the audacity to call me all sorts of awful names. He told me how I was a cheater. I got angry, and I told him that everything was all his fault. I told him how I was angry that he kept ignoring me and didn't kiss me after the hangout at our friend's house. Then he told me that he wasn't the one going about dreaming of their exes and kissing a stranger. Guys, we got into an argument that night. Samson told me that he had seen enough for that night and he couldn't just trust me. Seeing me walking to the bar that night and kissing a random guy was enough proof to show him that I couldn't be trusted. He told me that after I said I still dream about my ex, he couldn't just trust me. The fact that I admitted it in front of strangers was what angered him the most. He asked if we hadn't played that game, I wouldn't have said it. Samson told me right there that the marriage was over. Me kissing a total stranger was the height of it all. The trust he had for me before that night was little, but that kiss shattered everything. Immediately, I started begging Samson and asked him to forgive me. I told him that I came to the bar because I was angry and was also frustrated that things weren't working out. I told him that I'm ready to do anything to make it work. But Samson told me that it was already too late and that I had the chance, but I decided to go out and cheat. He also told me that admitting that I still dream about my ex was a good enough reason for him to go and cheat, because he was hurt for weeks after hearing that. He had the option to leave the house and come back late at night or spend the night outside, but he didn't do any of that. But I, on the other hand, was too quick to go out and kiss strangers to relieve stress. At that moment, the guy who my husband caught me kissing him interrupted and said that I wasn't entirely cheating and that he was getting everything wrong. Guys, before he could say another word, Samson gave him a heavy blow on his cheeks. He warned him not to interfere in our conversation. He told him that the only reason he hadn't beaten him up to a pulp when he got here was because he didn't want to ruin his night further than it had been. Samson pulled me by his collar and asked him not to speak again and pushed him one side. Out of fear, the guy stepped back. He couldn't match up to Samson's strength. Samson walked up to me and told me that the marriage was over between us. He told me that I had made everything easier for him not to ever trust me again. He also said my things would be packed outside and I shouldn't bother thinking that he would forgive me. At that point, I was speechless. I didn't know what to say. Tears were rolling down from my ears. At this point, people had already started staring at us. I was so ashamed of myself to the extent that I wanted to disappear from there. Samson then turned to leave and I went after him, but he stopped and warned me not to dare follow him because I wouldn't like the outcome. He looked dead serious when he said that. I was confused about what to do. I wanted to tell him how sorry I was. On the other hand, the guy who I was caught kissing had gotten a swollen face because of me. It wasn't his fault in any way. He even asked me to go home and fix things with Samson, but I didn't. Instead, I forced myself on him. That was what he wanted to clear out before he got landed with a hot blow. I felt really bad for him. So guys, I came closer to him and apologized for what happened, but he asked me to leave. He told me that he didn't want any other beating from my husband, and he told me that he wasn't even ready to take me as a girlfriend if that was my plan for coming back after my husband had asked me to get my bags. Guys, that statement got me angry to the extent that I picked up a glass cup with alcohol in it and poured it on him. I told him that he was stupid to think that I would come and date him, and I left. I went back home only to see my bags outside in the middle of the night. I started crying profusely and kept banging on the door for Samson to open up, but he didn't. He left me outside all alone in the dark. I cried all through the night. The next morning, Samson asked me to leave his vicinity and told me that I would hear from his lawyer. Guys, that's how I used my hands to destroy my marriage. No matter what happened, going out to kiss someone wasn't the right thing to do. I realized that I have messed up big time. Yes, couples get angry with each other. The fact that the other party isn't coming around too quickly doesn't mean that the other one should cheat. I let my emotions get the best of me, and I am terribly regretting it now. Update. Redditors. I'm not happy with the update that I'm about sharing with you guys. This is not how I had planned it. I thought my husband was going to forgive me for everything that happened, but he didn't. All what he said at the bar that day wasn't a joke. He meant it, and that he did. We got divorced a few days ago, just a month after he caught me at the bar. My whole life is a mess right now. I don't even know what to do or where to go from here. With the way my husband was angry with me, he didn't let me have a sniff of the property or any monetary benefits. Even when I pleaded with him, he gave me deaf ears. The kids I wanted so badly caused me everything. After that night of the game, Samson didn't touch me or kiss me. I missed both his touch and kiss. I didn't know that I should have given him time to come around. I was too quick to go out, and now I messed everything up. I wouldn't blame it all on alcohol. I knew what I did. Let's just say, I kissed that random guy out of anger, just to relieve myself from the burden that was in my heart. After that stupid act, was the burden lifted? No, it wasn't. In fact, it got worse. I never imagined going separate ways with my husband. This new reality of mine would not be that easy to accept. Every day, I keep praying to forgive myself for this mistake.